Recently, I released a video featuring my criticisms of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it was not well received. Not just because I was criticizing such a beloved game, but because the video was too long and there's a lot of improvisation that didn't need to be there. Ironically, my video was too long for the amount of content that was in it, which is a complaint that I had about the game. And if that wasn't enough, I was reading the script in character, and the character I was playing was kind of a really obnoxious character. I thought it was going to be funny, but it just didn't come out that way. So I know I can do better. For this video, I'll be revisiting my criticism of Final Fantasy VII Remake, but this time I'm going to be keeping the criticism as tight and concise as possible. You were kind enough to click on my video, and I'm going to be more respectful of your time. Without further ado, let's get down to business. I've been a fan of the Final Fantasy franchise ever since the first game came out on the NES, and for me, Sakaguchi will always be synonymous with Final Fantasy. From my perspective, the franchise just isn't the same without him, and while all the games have their strengths and weaknesses, I think a certain magic was gone forever once he left the company. Please bear this in mind as we discuss Nomura's interpretation of Sakaguchi's work. I won't say that there isn't a lot to love about Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I can absolutely understand why so many players really love it. It's a beautiful game and it fully realized characters and environments that up until now we've only seen in low-res polygons. It brings Midgar to life in a whole new way. Some of the new areas like Shinra employee housing are a sight to behold. It's a masterclass in world building in a number of ways. When I first got off the train and arrived in the slums, it took my breath away. I know a common criticism of this game is that there are some low-resolution textures, but quite frankly, I didn't really notice them. The soundtrack is spectacular, and I would expect no less from a franchise so well-known and well-recognized for its tremendous music. Not only did Hamauzu do a tremendous job of updating the original soundtrack, but also added a volume of new tracks including bangers like Stamp Song. Most of you probably already know this, but Final Fantasy VII's music didn't use the PlayStation's CD audio, but instead used the chip audio because at the time Square didn't know how to take advantage of it yet. This update really brings out the depth and beauty of Uematsu's work. Most of your favorite characters are here, including the trinity of Cloud, Barret, and Tifa, and the much beloved Aerith, and they're all brought to life in stunning details, sports bra controversy notwithstanding. Some fans have complained about Red 13 not being a playable character, but if I'm being honest, I never particularly liked him to begin with, so it really wasn't an issue for me. Finally, the materia is extremely well done here. There's so much depth and I really love this aspect of the game. I'll try to avoid making too many comparisons to the original Final Fantasy VII because I don't want to be accused of viewing this game through nostalgia goggles, but there are some instances where it's going to be unavoidable. In this case, the materia system in the original Final Fantasy VII had too few restrictions. It was very easy to do pretty insane and ridiculous things simply by combining materia in crazy ways. There really wasn't a lot of depth there. In the remake, this has completely changed, and there are tons of different character builds you can put together using your materia combinations in different creative ways. I've seen some videos of different builds that were really impressive where the player had improved the effectiveness of the characters many times over. There are a lot of materia now that feel really special and powerful and are crucial for some builds. It reminds me a lot of building out skill trees, as is very common in modern Western RPGs and MMOs, but it's mutable. You can change it any time. It's really an excellent system that allows for extensive hero crafting and tons of freedom for players. After hearing me talk about what I really like about Final Fantasy VII Remake, you're probably wondering what soured me on the experience. I'll be going into this in great detail for the rest of the video. If you disagree, that's fine. Please let me know your opinion in the comments. I encourage the discussion, but please keep it civil. Final Fantasy has one of the most passionate fandoms I've ever come across, and sometimes it can get a little out of control. Let's be respectful of each other. I really managed my expectations for this game. I kept up with all the developing news and played the demo, so I knew what to expect. So this is coming not from the point of view of someone who is expecting an exact copy of Final Fantasy VII with better graphics. Even after I played the demo, I wasn't totally sure I wanted to go through with the purchase. While it's amazing to see these places and these characters brought to life in this way, I have no choice but to echo a common complaint I've heard from within the community. With a 2-disc, 100 gig install, one would really expect the graphical fidelity of the game to match or exceed that of its predecessor. However, comparisons to Final Fantasy XV show there's a noticeable decline in graphical quality between the two games. The large, detailed assets are often cited as a reason for the install to be so large, but a game that came out 5 years prior with a smaller install size and a larger world has better graphics, so it's really difficult to believe that argument. Still, this wasn't really a deal breaker for me. There are two things that I really dislike about Final Fantasy VII Remake. The gameplay, which I think is really important in this kind of a game, in any game really, and the writing, which is so important to an RPG. The first thing that really struck me about the gameplay is how the entire world is a series of corridors, just like 13, but without the narrative pressure to make it make sense. While the layout of 13 is a divisive subject in itself, it can be argued that this was done in order to make it make sense in the narrative. Here it's just restrictive design. With Cloud running around doing chores all the time, it gets really tedious really fast, especially with so many areas looking so similar. All the side stuff just feels like padding to make the game longer. I've always felt like having some freedom to explore was an important feature of Final Fantasy games. Even in 10, as linear as it was, you could explore some areas of the game, and both 10 and 13 had large open areas you could quest in later on. Here it just feels super restricted, which is frustrating when you take into account how awesome some of these areas look, and how cool they would be to explore. I would much rather be able to explore some different areas than run back and forth for hours in a single static zone where everything looks very samey. This brings to light some critical issues with world building. I was really surprised and confused when I arrived in the Sector 7 slums and there was daylight. The people of Midgar are supposed to be oppressed living under the plate. There isn't supposed to be any sunlight there. It's supposed to be dark all the time. The only exceptions are places where the plate is falling apart, like above the church. The sun lamps really kill the poetic and literary ideas put forth by the use of light and darkness in the original game. It has a negative impact on the tone and some of the symbolism. I think it's a bad decision on Nomura's part, and it just shows he either doesn't understand Sakaguchi's original ideas, or doesn't respect them. Even the beginning of the story makes a significant change to the events, in which it's clear that Shinra detonated the reactor to make Avalanche look like terrorists, and this completely invalidates Barrett's redemption arc in the original game. It's something that didn't need to be changed, and it only makes the story and the character that much less interesting. Much of the literary content of Final Fantasy VII has been obliterated here already. I don't want to go too into detail because I am trying to keep this relatively short, but if you would like a literary analysis into how changes in the script have ignored all the literary value of the original game, let me know in the comments and I'll consider it for a future release. In a series known for its storytelling, there are quite a few glaring issues here. From Jessie's relentless pursuit of Cloud to Tifa's newfound role as a woman in over her head who needs Cloud to come rescue her, the characters just aren't written well, especially the women, who are written as very weak here, as opposed to the much stronger types of female characters we're accustomed to in these games. Instead of giving the audience some real character growth and development and writing relatable characters, Nomura and his team have given us shonen anime tropes complete with a harem of women who can't stop shamelessly flinging themselves at the silent protagonist. It's lazy writing, and the poor storytelling is held together by a deus ex machina in the form of the Whispers, whose only role in the story is to fill in the plot holes with magic. On the note of plot holes, our heroes are on TV, branded as terrorists, and the citizens of Midgar seem unimpressed. Shouldn't they experience a similar pressure to the heroes of 13 who are constantly being hunted and having the citizens turned against them? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Moving on to the gameplay, unfortunately, I really dislike the fighting. Don't get me wrong, these battles require effective planning, strategy, and execution to overcome. The encounters are mostly compelling, and you cannot simply mash buttons to get through them like you could in some other games. My main complaint is that while it seems imperative that the player control all three characters at all times, it's also impossible to do so. Spells and special abilities can only be used when the ATB gauge is full, but in order to fill the ATB gauge quickly, the character has to be actively attacking an enemy at all times. However, the characters that are not being controlled by the player don't make any attempt at all to build the ATB gauge. Only the active character actually builds up ATB at any given time. You can issue a command to the other party members when their ATB gauge is full, but this only works for magic and certain abilities. Every character also has a number of bread and butter skills like Barrett's Overdrive and Tifa's martial arts that require actively controlling the character. The AI will never use these abilities, which means every second of every battle you're losing large amounts of potential damage and healing. I think this would be really improved just by having a gambit system like 12 where the AI characters could be given some basic rules to follow in order to build up their ATB gauge while another character is active. The squad-based action RPG combat has been done many times better by other games like Mass Effect and Pillars of Eternity. Maybe I just don't get it. Let me know in the comments if you can explain what I'm missing about this battle system. I've heard people say it's great, but it just feels off to me. This was a large point of contention in my original video, but I'm going to stand by this. The title of this game is misleading and lazy. It doesn't indicate that it's the first part in a series, and that caused a lot of confusion among the fan base. And plus Final Fantasy VII Remake was a working title. It was supposed to be changed before release, and they just never bothered to do it. It also set off endless debates about what the word remake means. Even now, 6 months out, it's still unclear what the game's place in the franchise really is. I've heard it's a sequel, because the timelines got mixed up and this actually takes place after the original game but on a separate timeline. But most recently it seems like there's a full franchise reboot going on for Final Fantasy VII as a franchise in and of itself. At the time of this writing, we still don't know how many parts there will be, how long they're going to be, how much they're going to cost. There's been a ton of rumor and speculation, but nothing concrete yet. I talked about this in my original video in a lot more depth, but a more concise version here. I believe the intention was to kick off a franchise of Final Fantasy VII with opportunities for movies, anime, and tons of merchandising. I think Square will stretch it out as much as they can, but rumor has it that they were disappointed with the sales of the game, so it's possible this may never come to fruition, but we'll see. I want to thank you so much for watching this, especially if you watched the first video. I know that a lot of people really didn't like it, and I wanted to do a better job, and I hope I did that here. I super duper appreciate it if you watched this after watching the first one and gave me a second chance to kind of win back your viewership. If you have any comments, let me know down below. If you enjoyed this criticism, please like and subscribe to the channel. I want to do some more critique videos in the future, but my next video is going to just be more of like a retrospective review of Legend of Dragoon, and I have a lot more positive things to say about that game than negative. I think I had a few in the cons column, but by and large, it's an excellent game, and I wanted to talk about how great it is. I would also like to apologize to anyone to whom I was rude in the comments of the last video. I have no excuse except that my feelings were hurt. I had worked hard on the video and I really thought it was good, but I realize now I made a lot of mistakes, so I'm really sorry if I was rude to you in the comments. With that all being said, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, game over.